Hello again, food fans. Let's tackle the subject of vitamins. We're going to be talking about an overview of these substances, and then we will talk about fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins. So pretty early on in the last century, researchers figured out that there were these substances in foods that are really vital for life for a number of reasons. And since that recognition, roles of these vitamins has gotten more intense and more common because of the fact that vitamins play so many roles in so many bodily functions, including helping prevent or avoid getting cancer. Watch those videos, you know what I'm going to say. That last one, the dark history of Flintstone vitamins, is particularly eye-opening. And also, so is the weird reason we think vitamins are good for us. And they're not necessarily, that's not necessarily true. So watch those for more info. Now, we know that vitamins are important for nutritional health. You have to remember that vitamin supplements do not offer as many benefits as the food that you eat, because they are man-made and the food that you eat is natural. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. You need vitamins for all of the physiological functions that you can possibly think of. And many vitamins have multiple roles in the body. And for example, vitamin C helps prevent scurvy, and it also seems to help prevent against various types of cancer. So if you have a vitamin deficiency, and there are a couple that are listed there, the effects can be so debilitating. It's scary. Depending on what the deficiency is, when you restore the appropriate level of vitamins in the body, the effects can be just as dramatic. And it's really kind of shocking. Because of that, people will spend a ton of money with the thought that, oh, these vitamins can help me cure cancer, heart disease, what have you. But can they? Let's find out more. The role of these organic molecules is not just about preventing deficiency diseases. It's all about obtaining and maintaining good health. And for example, when you talk to people who are on low-fat diets to prevent disease, they tend to get healthier if they are eating diets that are pretty heavily dependent on veg, on fruits, and on whole grains. And that's not necessarily because it's low fat, and maybe more because all of those foods are vitamin rich. So we know that vitamins are going to be different than the macromolecules. But let's go over how. They are individual units. They don't get linked together. So the structure is different. The function is going to be different because when you break them down, you're not going to be getting ATP. However, certain vitamins act as what are known as proenzymes that work in conjunction with the enzymes that release energy from our friends, the macromolecules. Also, the amount of vitamins that you need to consume is generally in micrograms or milligrams, not in grams. So you don't need a lot to maintain health or get healthier. So what's bioavailability? You might have heard that term kicked around. Basically, it describes this. Does your body recognize what you are consuming? And if it does, can it break it down, digest it, and absorb those nutrients and use them? So the availability of vitamins is going to depend on two factors. How much, what mass, what amount is provided by any food, specific food. And then how much can you absorb and use in terms of digestion, absorption, and then assimilation. So foods can be analyzed to determine their vitamin content, and that information is published in tables that contain data on various food compositions. The food that you eat is highly, in general, the non-processed food that you eat, let me correct myself, the non-processed food that you eat, those fresh or cooked vegetables, fresh or cooked, or the cooked meat, things that are relatively close to the source, are foods that we evolved eating or resemble foods that we evolved eating. And therefore, the nutrients tend to be highly bioavailable. The more processing that has happened to a food, the less bioavailable are the nutrients. And that should make sense. So when you're actually looking at the bioavailability, spit that out of a vitamin, it's kind of hard to do because there are a whole bunch of different factors that come into play. Of course, how efficient is the digestion and absorption of that nutrient? What's the time of transit in the GI tract? What have you eaten previously? What's your current nutritional status? Have you consumed anything that will work in conjunction with that vitamin at the same time? What's the food preparation? Is it raw? Is it cooked? Is it processed? Is it overcooked? And is the nutrient synthetic or fortified or naturally occurring? Your best bet is always naturally occurring. Now, we talked about how some vitamins can be precursors, or they're also known as provitamins. So they are available in what's known as inactive forms. And once they get inside the body, that precursor is going to be changed to an active form that becomes functional, that your body recognizes. We know that vitamins are organic. That means they contain carbon. Remember that? Because of that, they can be destroyed. And when they are damaged or destroyed, they can't be used as vitamins for your physiological functioning. Therefore, you have to use care when you're storing food and when you're cooking food in order to preserve as much of the function as possible. Make sure you watch that, because I'm writing the quiz and there will be questions from each and every one of the videos that are peppered throughout this presentation. Joy of joys. Now, here's an example. Oxygen will damage vitamin C. So if you are cutting an orange, for example, you will lose some of the vitamin C when that food is cut and when the orange or the lime or the lemon is exposed to the air. Hey, good question. Does microwaving food destroy vitamins? What do you think? Find out by watching that video. No spoiler, no, spit that out. Boy, I'm having a hard time today. No spoiler alerts. Now, let's move on to solubility. Lipids are hydrophobic. That should not be a surprise. The other two macromolecules, carbs and proteins, are hydrophilic. There are similarities in vitamins because some are hydrophilic and some are hydrophobic. The water-soluble vitamins are hydrophilic. The fat-soluble vitamins are ADEK, and they are hydrophobic. So, as each vitamin was discovered and named, it was, or discovered and researched, sorry, it was given a name and sometimes a letter and sometimes a number on top of that, which is kind of crazy making, because if you look at the water-soluble vitamins, a lot of the B vitamins, for example, they have multiple names, which is kind of confusing. So the reason that we need to know about whether they're water-soluble or fat-soluble is because solubility of the food source affects how each vitamin is digested, absorbed, transported, stored, and then excrete it if you have too much of it. Not a surprise that water-soluble vitamins are going to be found in watery components of food. Fat-soluble vitamins are going to be hanging out together in fats and oils. Once absorbed, those water-soluble vitamins will move right into the circulatory system. The fat-soluble vitamins actually have to go through the process of being moved into the lymphatic system and then getting added to the circulatory system using special transport carriers. Who remembers what those special transport carriers are called? It's a good test question. Sure is. Now, when it comes, going back to the water-soluble vitamins, when they hit the bloodstream, they're just going to circle around and around and around in the blood. Fat-soluble vitamins need those protein carriers to move through the body. The kidneys are these almost magical, mystical organs that do this incredible job of monitoring the blood concentration of multiple compounds and ions, and in addition can detect and remove small excesses of those compounds or ions, including water-soluble vitamins. They get moved through the kidneys, added to urine, and then you expel the excess out when you urinate. So if you're consuming large amounts of water-soluble vitamins, you can actually overwhelm your physiological reactions and have some negative effects. And we'll talk more about that as we actually go through the vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are going to be stored in adipose cells instead of being excreted. Fat-soluble vitamins are more likely to be problematic because you retain them, you store them. There's no way to get rid of them because they're hanging out in those adipose cells. So they are more likely to reach toxic levels if you are consuming them in excess relative to the water-soluble vitamins, because for the most part, you're going to urinate out excess water-soluble vitamins. So another fun fact is this. You know that you're going to store fat-soluble vitamins in adipose cells. So you can actually store those, eat them in excess on occasion, store the vitamins, and then over time still meet your body's needs as the fat breaks down and those vitamins are released. That's pretty cool. Water-soluble vitamins have different lifespans in the body. They're going to be retained for varying amounts of time. And a single day of mission of any vitamin will not bring on a deficiency, but clearly you need to consume water-soluble vitamins more frequently and more regularly than the fat-soluble ones. Now, more is not always better and can lead to toxicity. So excessive intakes of vitamins can actually lead to some pretty big problems. Some of those water-soluble vitamins that we've been talking about have toxic effects, and you'll hear more about them as we actually go through the vitamins. If they're taken in large doses, for example, niacin. And there are the vitamins, niacin, B6, folate, choline, vitamin C. All of those will have upper intake levels because if you're going over those pretty quickly, you can start having some problems. There's not enough information to determine whether or not there should be upper intake levels for the remaining Bs, but it doesn't mean that if you're consuming them in excess, you might not have a problem.